Hello, my lovely people. Good morning to you all, and I welcome you to Linda's TV show, The Home of News. If it is your first time and you like what we are doing here, kindly subscribe, put on your notification bell to all notification. Here we react to all forms of videos, local, international. And I want to seize this opportunity to put a disclaimer that here in Linda's TV show, we do not preach misleading information, hate speech, violent or instigating war. We are only here to inform, educate, sanitize the members of the public about what is happening. I deserve this opportunity to appreciate YouTube for creating this wonderful platform. If not for YouTube, I don't know how we will be able to disseminating information to the members of the public. YouTube, I appreciate you. So my
Nigerian activist and author, director, producer, Pan-Africanist, all of that stuff, Joseph Achukwu, and we're going to talk about Abraham Traore. We're going to talk about Burkina Faso and Africa, Africa Rising. Joseph, welcome to my humble YouTube channel.
Thank you so much, Colin. Nice to be here with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, there are times when you see a figure and there's something special. You know, there's people that just, okay, that's Garland Nixon, some slump on YouTube, great. But you see somebody, and in my life, I've been fortunate enough to, I knew Paul Robeson Jr. well. He was a very good friend of mine and a mentor. I know still Dr. Julius Garvey, Marcus Garvey's son. I've interviewed him. People that just the lineage of their father. For God's sake, every time I was talking to him, I'm like, wow, this is Marcus Garvey's son. This is Paul Robeson Jr.'s son. There's special figures in history. I get that feeling, if you know what I'm saying. It's not something you can put in words, but it's a feeling with Abraham Traore that this guy is something special, not just for Burkina Faso, but for not just African people in Africa, but worldwide. Your thoughts?
I agree with you 110%. If there's anything like 1,000%, I do agree with you on that. I'm serious. In most of my posts, I've made it abundantly clear to anyone who cares to know that what we are witnessing in Burkina Faso is not the usual thing that we have seen in the past in Africa. The individual you're looking at is a revolutionary archetype of the 21st century. I borrowed that from a very brilliant brother who said that. I said, this guy is a revolutionary archetype. I actually call him an incarnation of the revolutionaries that have been unalived in the history of Africa in the past. I always say that this guy is a combination of the reincarnation of all these guys, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi, these men who wanted the best for Africa and wanted Africa to break with the colonial masters and actually pursue its own destiny by itself. And all of them were killed because of this. And so when you look at Abraham Traore, you're looking at a guy who has come out from the loins of these men. This is the symbol of the resilience, the transformational and revolutionary resilience of Africa, saying no matter how much you try to kill us, we are still here and we are definitely going to win. You can kill the careers of the idea, but you can never kill the idea. You can kill the messengers, but you can never kill the message. That is what is happening. Can you imagine how far back Patrice Lumumba tried to give us the same thing that we are looking at today in Burkina Faso, and they unalived him? Can you imagine how long ago Thomas Sankara tried to do it and they killed him? And Muammar Gaddafi recently tried and they took him out. And so Africans have already resigned to the fate that whoever comes up to give us freedom, to help us to break from the shackles of colonialism, which now manifests in the form of neo-colonialism that is so endemic in Africa today, that person is going to lose their lives. This is what we have resigned to. But you see, Mother Africa says, no, not so fast. I'm still here, and I'm never going to accept slavery over freedom. So that's how I look at Abraham Traore. He's not a regular. He is not an ordinary guy.
Your thoughts on, and I felt like this when I saw him at May 9th with those leaders. That was a special feeling. What were your thoughts when you saw him in Moscow at the May 9th parade with the world leaders?
My thoughts when I saw Abraham was pride. I was proud to be an African man. Garland, many years ago, I was in the Republic of Ghana, in the capital of Ghana, Accra. And I was listening to BBC's Focus on Africa. All right? I know BBC. BBC is not my favorite. You see, mainstream media, they're liars. So, but most of the time I listened to BBC. Back then, I would just listen to hear about things that are happening on the spot. If you take away live events that they are covering, there is nothing else. Every other thing is propaganda. So I was listening as usual because there was nothing else to listen to. The local radios were not impressing me. So I just listened. And expectedly, because I always expect to see something nasty there, I overheard a guy that was being interviewed, unfortunately, a Chinese guy who was being interviewed on his first trip to Africa. And he said that the biggest shock to him was that he came to Africa and realized that people were not living on trees with monkeys. I was blown away. This was in the 2000s that this happened. And when I heard that, something mysteriously broke inside of me. And I went out and wrote a song called Proud to be African. Of course, it was just a song I was playing around. I just wrote it. And that song, every time I play that song, I remember the nonsense that I just heard from that guy. So when I saw Ibrahim in Moscow, the first thing that came to my head was that song, Proud to be African. So in my lifetime, as I have always predicted, I would actually witness an African nation standing shoulder to shoulder with the world leaders in this lifetime, not being relegated to the background and told, go and sit down over there. Go and sit your butt down over there. You were not supposed to be here, which is the reason why they never give us a seat at the UN Security Council, Garland. We don't have a seat. A nation a continent that is so big as Africa. You know why they didn't give us a seat? It is because the colonial masters gathered in Berlin in the 1800s and divided our continent and gave it the fake borders that we have today, and then psychologically enforced those borders in our minds so that we stay disconnected in our minds from one another. All of that now is about to go down the drains, all for the good of Africa. So whenever you look at Abraham Traore, and not just him, whenever you look at Assimi Goïta of Mali, whenever you look at Abdurrahmane Tiani of Niger Republic, you are looking at the resilience of revolutionary Africa. You are looking at the practical and pragmatic renaissance of Africa, Mother Africa, saying, I have had enough. The time has come for my freedom, and nobody, no matter who you are, will stop me. And this is also a message to our brothers like you in diaspora. You guys now need to know that Africa is roaring back to life. Time to stop feeling inferior in the land where you feel you are not accepted. Come back to where you look like everybody and everybody looks like you, where you are actually originally from. This is your roots. Africa is your roots. You need to begin to come back. Pour into Burkina Faso. Pour into Mali. Pour into Niger Republic. Let's go and defend motherland and make sure that when we say never again, we mean never again. I was proud to see him there. And I believe by the grace of God that he will not be the only one who will stand like that in Moscow with world leaders and even in other different fora that are coming in the future. Many more African countries are going to throw away these garbage people called colonials, and they are going to reclaim their sovereignty and now be in charge of their own destinies.
Do you find it seems to me that something is spreading in Africa like I haven't seen before. You know what I mean? It's there have been, there's been a long time since we've had this kind of a leader in Africa, and it seems to me that the African people all throughout the continent, some who even had their differences, all feel it, and the Traore phenomenon seems to be having an effect on all of Africa at this time. Like, it's bringing everyone together, and even then, it's something. And I'm certainly, we're praying for Brother Traore, and I don't believe anything's going to happen to him. Period. But I'm just saying he has started a fire that can't be extinguished, I think. I don't believe anything's going to happen to him. I'm just saying there was dry wood and straw everywhere, and there just needed to be a spark. And so the imperial powers and the colonial powers that are saying we have to get him, I don't think they really understand that what he's done is spark something, and it's no longer just about him. It's about Africa feeling that it's their time to rise again.
I agree with you. It's no longer business as usual. I explained this to George Galloway, and I told him the reason why no African could rise up to challenge the ills of the colonials, to challenge the statutory enslavement of an entire nation or entire nations of people, was because we didn't have any power backing us. We were already crippled from birth as Africans for generations. You were already made to know you are a slave and will remain a slave forever. And so whenever you dared to stand up to the colonials, you are told that, look, watch your back, you're about to go down. And truly, that person always went down. That's why we lost the guys we lost. And so what happened now differently is that in this game that we're playing today, which is being played differently, we have a power behind us. We have the power of the Russians behind us. And remember that back in the days, the Russians, the Soviets, stood on the side of liberation in favor of the Africans against the colonials. But they don't want to teach that to our children. They wanted to make sure that they use the mainstream media propaganda machinery to paint Russia as the enemy. Meanwhile, Russia is truly our friend. So when they began to encroach into Russia, when they said, no, we're not going to have any 1 inch towards the east, remember the whole fight between Russia and Ukraine, which I keep explaining to people, that what mainstream media will tell you that, oh, Russia just invaded, and Russia just woke up one morning and didn't feel so good about Ukraine and decided, okay, I just want to invade. I am a very strong military. I'm going to invade Ukraine. Nobody gives a backstory to that. Nobody remembers what agreement was signed in the past, or the promises that were given to Russia, that NATO was not going to expand 1 inch east. Meanwhile, after saying that, you have taken almost all the former Soviet countries that are close to Russia, to the point you are now by Russia's border, which is Ukraine, and you are telling the country to stay quiet. Remind me again what happened during the Cuban crisis. You know how far away Cuba is from America? But it's a threat strategically for anyone to come there and say they want to establish anything militarily. America had to bomb, had to react, which is right, and everybody see it as right. But look at what is happening. You want to get close. So when Russia saw that these guys are liars, every promise they make to us, they have reneged on all the promises. Russia now decided, you know what? I am going to go down to Africa and take away the breast milk from your mouth, because Africa is their breast milk. They cannot do anything without Africa. Garland, listen, while we're on it, let me tell you something. I want to give you some figures so you won't look emotional. What do you think is the gold reserves of France? France's gold reserves rank as the 4th largest in the whole world. The 4th largest. Garland, let your followers and yourself do a research. Ask and check if there is any single drop of gold in the land or the source of France. Not one, not even a dust of it. But they have the 4th largest gold reserves in the world. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso, the home of gold, Mali, the kingdom of gold, Niger, all these places, not a single gold reserve from them. They don't have one. This is why Jacques Chirac, the former president of France, said that if you take away Africa, that France will descend into the ranks of third world countries. Because without us, these guys are finished. And yet they don't give us respect. They don't even say, let's have a win-win situation. Let's come into a win-win situation where I take this and you take that. And then it will be based on mutual respect. No, this is about stealing from you. This is why France was taking uranium from Niger Republic. At uranium, they were selling for almost 200 and something euros, but they were giving Niger Republic about 0.80 euros per kilogram. So when I'm vibrating like this, people don't understand the anger and the pain. How do you take a powerful content resource like uranium that is needed? Do you know that Niger Republic is the 7th largest producer of uranium and the 2nd largest supplier of uranium to the EU? This is Niger Republic. Yes, I know you're surprised.
Wow.
The 7th largest producer in the world and the 2nd largest supplier to the EU. And you will take all the uranium, and for 1 kilo, you're giving them less than €1, but it is selling for 200 euros in the global market. How do you do that? And so, even with the tiny little they give to them, which is the royalty they are paying them for that, they still get to deposit 85% of that money as a foreign reserve, foreign currency reserve in Banque de France. So when they deposit 85% of that tiny little fraction, they are left with 15%, which is absolutely nothing. In fact, call it money that is good for just one family. And you leave that for an entire nation. And so what happens? They become poor, they become needy, and then they have to go back again to the same France, the same Banque de France to say, we need money. They are allowed to borrow only about 20%. If they go to say we want to get more than 20% of what they have deposited, they are questioned. And in that borrowing they borrow, they are borrowing it at market prices with very high interest rate. This is their own money that France took from them, that they call colonial tax. And France explained that the reason they are paying colonial tax to us is because we colonized them, and when we colonized them, we built infrastructure in their lands, so they have to keep paying us forever. No time limit. You pay colonial tax, and that is keeping 85% of your foreign currency reserve in Banque de France. Are you kidding me? This is what is happening to French colonies. 14 of them in the... Okay, Garland, please. I know you have a little time. I don't want to rush this. I'm going to read you.
No, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
2012 report. Let me read you country by country. I don't have the current report, but I will give you how much these countries paid to France. That's why France receives over 500 billion every year from these countries. 500 billion every year, plus the stealing of their resources. In 2012, the approximate foreign currency reserves, including gold, that was paid into Banque de France from Niger Republic was 1.17 billion US dollars. In the same 2012, Togo was $510 million. Benin Republic was $690 million. Cameroon was $3.38 billion. Guinea-Bissau, $190 million. Congo-Brazzaville, Republic of Congo, $5.5 billion. You know Congo. Congo is the most blessed nation, resource-rich nation on earth, okay? Ivory Coast and Cote d'Ivoire, how much? 4.24 billion. Mali, 1.31 billion. Gabon, 2.35 billion. Chad, 1.16 billion. Central African Republic, 160 million. Senegal, 2.25 billion. Burkina Faso, 930 million. Equatorial Guinea, $4.4 billion. This was 2012 figures. Every year they do that, apart from Mali, Niger Republic, and Burkina Faso that have now extricated themselves and pulled away from that evil union. The rest of them are still doing the same thing till this day, paying money to these guys. For what? Because they rely on Africa to survive. That's why I went this long route to show you that the game is played differently this time. When you are looking at Burkina Faso, it's no longer a Sahelian project. It is now an African project because Africans have had enough. Africans are tired. You cannot keep taking our natural resources and tell us that the highest royalty paid to any nation in Africa on their natural resources is 5%. 5, Garland, 5% royalty. How did I know? The former president of Gambia, Yahya Jammeh, was kicked out of office by the West because he said, I am not taking 5% royalty on the natural resources that are in the land of my fathers. They say, why? He said, how can you give me 5% royalty? Are we not supposed to have an agreement on how this is done? Are you not supposed to come into partnership and tell me what you bring to the table? I'll tell you, okay, I own this, you take this, I take that. No, you don't have that right if you are in Africa. They told him, Mr. President, you should be happy because the 5% we're offering you, there are only 3 countries in Africa that have up to 5%. The rest are lower. So Garland, we have less, which is why the president, the wife of the president of Sierra Leone, sitting president, was complaining. If she just complained recently, the video went viral, and she was saying to everyone that, listen, we are given 0.0001% royalty on the gold. You know, Sierra Leone is a gold coast. It's a gold coast. But if you visit Sierra Leone today, it's like a shithole. Pardon my language. Sierra Leone is a shadow. It's not even, you can't even find where to put your feet. So backward, so messed up, so devastated economically. But if you imagine if the gold in that country was being nationalized the way Africa, if Abraham Traore is nationalizing the wealth of his country right now, everybody from Sierra Leone would have been living so big, you won't see any one of them going to queue for visas to travel anywhere. This is what is happening to countries in Africa. And this is why every African diasporan must pay attention and must back what is happening in the Sahel. Because if we can consolidate and hold down what has happened in Sahel, many more victories will roll in. If we let them touch any one of those guys, we are done. Psychologically, they will weaken us. And you won't see any revolution anywhere again. But thank God for the gift of Russia in times like this. I believe that the rivalry, or not even the rivalry, the animosity between Russia and the West was created by heaven so that we can have our freedom. So that's why today it is not easy for them to take him out like they would have before. He wouldn't even have lasted 2 years in power. He's been there for more. And so much is happening in Burkina Faso.
You know, I knew when I heard him first say, I didn't know much about him. And then the first thing I read, I was reading, and he said, you know, he was in Russia and they had, it was like an Africa summit. And various African leaders were saying things. And when what he said was, what, they were asking for help and things like that. And what he said was, why are we going around the world begging when we're so rich? And I knew, man, this guy's looking at this thing as something different. He's not looking at it as we're weak and we have to ask everybody for help and what. He recognized the strength of Africa and said, we have to exercise our strength. We are not poor. We are not beggars. And the vision of him, he's a big, strong guy. You know, you look at him, he's a big, strong guy. And he wears his military uniform, you know, the uniform of armed struggle. And the way he talks is, it's not anger, it's confidence. It's strength. And as soon as you hear him, you say, yeah, that guy, he means business. And he's not weak. He's not begging. He's not asking. He's saying, we have a right to this and we will have it.
Yes, because, Garland, passion is infectious. When you see passion, no one explains it to you. You can feel it. It's very infectious, very relatable. When you see Abraham Traore, the reason we call him an archetype is because he is an embodiment of all the cries and the weeping and the pains of Africa. He's not the only one in the Sahel. Remember, the revolution began in Mali, and we have to give it up for that brother in Mali who held it together. Burkina Faso then happened, and then you had Niger Republic. It was the motivation of Mali. It was Mali that motivated this Burkina Faso, that inspired Burkina Faso to happen. And Burkina Faso inspired Niger Republic to happen. And the three of them are now inspiring many other revolutionaries and revolutions that are breeding right now, that are sitting in different parts of Africa. There are so many more that are going to fall in. Mark my words. In no distant time, you're going to see many more African countries. And that is the essence of making sure that Abraham Traore is protected. Abraham Traore only just happens to be the one that has been singled out as the poster child for what God is about to do on the continent of Africa. He's not the only one, but he has been singled as a sign. When I made a particular video I put out some time ago, I said, Abraham Traore is the sign from God. A single human being that became a sign of an entire revolutionary process. That's who he has become. So when you hear him speak, you will feel it. You will see it coming. You can feel the fire in his bones. And he's very calm and calculated. He knows exactly that our time has come. They said you cannot defeat an idea whose time has come. How can you defeat it? This idea has been there. It's been there for so many years. Many of our forefathers died hoping and believing that this day will come. But eventually, it pleased God that it will happen in our own lifetime. And it is happening right now. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. That is why, Garland, can you believe it? You think it's fake news? More than 18 to 20 assassination attempts on Abraham Traore, all of them failed. And I can bet you today, he is not the only one they're trying to take out. You can imagine how many assassination attempts Assimi Goïta of Mali has also endured. You can imagine how many that Chiani of Niger Republic has also endured. But now they are targeting Abraham Traore because Burkina Faso is now the place, like the headquarters of the AES nations, the Sahel states that have broken with the colonial powers. So Burkina Faso is the security headquarters for them. That's where almost everything is coordinated from. So they want to target and destroy this one that has come out as the symbol of the revolution, so that the moment they do it, every other person will be psychologically incapacitated, and the rest of Africa will crawl back into their cocoons, crawl back into their shells and say, well, I said it before, we are never going to be free. We are not meant to be free. A lot of Africans already believe that we are not meant to be free from the colonial powers. That's why you have puppets all over the place. Puppets giving their whole life to serve the colonial powers in the 21st century. Garland, these are our brothers, because they are cowards. They have given up. They no longer believe that miracles are possible to happen on the continent. They gave up hope. That's why. So the colonials used them. Look at Cameroon. Look at so many parts of Africa. Leaders, so-called leaders in power for generations. And France is so happy. And yet General Michael Langley is coming to tell us that the problem of the world is Abraham Traore that just came to power in 2022. But you have the guy in Cameroon and in different other parts of Africa who have done decades in power, nothing but tyranny on their people. And then allowing France and colonials to steal all the money and take them away. That's all they've done. Nobody cares about the people who are dying and languishing in poverty. But the one man who has come out with his brothers in the Sahel region to say, enough is enough. Africa belongs to Africans. We don't want to exist alone as Africans. We want to do business. We want to be partners with every other person, but it has to be a win-win. You cannot make it a win-lose in favor of the colonials on something that belongs to me. No, enough is enough.
Now, what you hear the people, the day-to-day people, your friends, your relatives. What are the people of Africa, the everyday people on the street saying? Are you hearing something different from them? Are the whisperings, the discussions of everyday people who are struggling to survive, is that changing because of this new phenomenon?
Garland, do you know what is happening in Africa? It's like, when I was speaking with George, I told him there has been a massive supernatural shift in the atmosphere. It's like a generational shift in consciousness. And everywhere you go on the continent of Africa, it doesn't matter what country you go to, you can feel it is so palpable that you can almost touch it and taste it. Africans are generally tired. They've had enough. And the good news is that we are living in an era where social media is now the thing. Okay? It's no longer mainstream media. Because the reason why they got away with Libya and Muammar Gaddafi's, execution was because we didn't have social media that strong then. Social media was not that powerful. Today, social media is the thing. Basically, social media has retired a lot of mainstream media outlets. Because now we are having a lot of citizen reporting. We're no longer relying on BBC or on IFR or whatever from France or all the CNN and the rest. No, we get the news and report the news by ourselves. The reason Abrahim Traore is still there today is because the social media power that we have in our hands today is being unleashed in full force from every part of Africa, and not just Africans in Africa, but Africans in diaspora. Did you see when they called for a protest around the world? All over the world, people poured out on the streets of London, United States, Uganda, Tanzania, everywhere you can imagine. People were all over on the street because everybody's tired. There's something that happens to you when you've had it up to here. You just know, what? I've got nothing to lose anymore. I don't care. Africans are literally pouring into Burkina Faso. You can do independent research on this. They are pouring in saying, we are ready to fight. Tell us what to do. If it is training, we are ready to train. We want to fight alongside you. Because if we can protect this land, we can protect the rest of Africa. So Africans on the street, everywhere, 99.9% are in support of what is happening in the Sahel. And you know why they are in support? Let me paint you a picture that is very important. Okay, this is very important. So all the years as we were hoping for liberation on the continent of Africa, we had a bunch of plans in our heads how we were going to bring it about. Okay, and one of the plans we had was civil disobedience. And so when civil disobedience began to break out, like you saw in Nigeria, and we had the NSAS problem, and they massacred a lot of Nigerian youths, massacred them and got away with it. And after Nigeria, Kenya happened, I think as recently as last year. And when Kenya happened, nothing happened. People were killed and nobody was held responsible. So many people now notice that with the Nigeria and Kenya situation, we even knew this way before that there's no way this civil disobedience thing is going to happen, because these guys are bloodthirsty. They will kill and massacre you, and they already know that the human mind can forget so easily. So they know that after a short while, we're just going to forget about it, and they will just be resigned to history. So we now said, no way, this is not going to happen. So the second option we had was political revolution. Now, politics, we found out that because they created the political machinery that actually is used to govern all the nations, conquered nations of Africa, it is so difficult to actually have them defeated in their own game that they created. We had a man called President Jonathan, Goodluck Jonathan, that came to power. He didn't have to go to Chatham House to go and declare that, I am going to be loyal to the colonial powers. He became president because the president that was there in power, that he was vice to, had died, which was Yaradua. And so because of that, he was the most effective president, one of the most effective Nigeria has ever had in history, maybe after Obasanjo. I think he even did almost better than Obasanjo. But at the end of the day, why did that happen? It happened because the colonials were taken unawares by the emergence of Jonathan as president. But guess what? They didn't let him have a second term. They knocked him out. So no matter how we tried, there was nothing we could have done to beat them at their game. They created the political structure that governs Africa everywhere. That is why if you are not a criminal, if you are not corrupt, if you are not a very useless coward in Africa, you cannot be president approved by the colonial powers. They don't like intelligent people. They don't like Pan-Africanists coming to the seat of power because that's what they created. And so what were we left with now? We were now left with military takeover by force, which is what you call coup d'etat. You know, coup d'etat has this terrible thing, stigma to it. Oh, well, coup d'etat, no, you should have to go through democracy, but there is no democracy. The democracy they created was only for Africans to hold us down. They don't practice democracy. If they practice democracy, what is it that just happened in Romania? Where somebody wins the election because you don't like him, you kick him out, and then you bring your own person, and nobody gets a call to say congratulations until it is the guy that we put there. Why do you support people who rig elections in Africa and you tell me you have democracy? Why do you leave Paul Biya in Cameroon for about 42 years in power, and he's almost like a walking corpse, and he's still there and he's your darling, and you say you have democracy? So democracy is fake. So we now decided, you know what, we have got to a point where we say, if we see a coup d'etat that takes away the evil and gives us our sovereignty back, we will back it with everything in us. That's how we ended up with Mali. That's how we ended up with Burkina Faso. That's how we ended up with Niger Republic. And that's how I believe almost all the revolutions are going to follow. Sadly, that's probably going to be the case.
It seems to me that what you're saying is true, because it seems to me, basically what I'm hearing and what I'm reading, the puppets are frightened. That the puppet leaders are scared to death right now. They're looking over their shoulders. They're getting extra security. They're calling their masters in the city of London, in Washington, D.C. That, to me, one of the big signs is the fear and discomfort that's rising, the anxiety that's rising with these people that the colonial powers have been keeping in. I'm not in power because they have no power. It is the facade. It is the veneer, the illusion of power. Power flows through them. And they benefit when the money from their country flows through them and goes into the hands of the colonial powers. They get a little chunk to put in their pocket, and that's a lie, but it's a little chunk. But they're scared to death.
Yes, they are very scared right now. I told George, they're very scared, and the power that runs through them from the colonial powers is tyrannical power. Tyranny runs through them. Okay, and so what they do, they are overseers. They basically come to oversee the transfer of wealth from African nations to the colonizers in Europe. They are overseers. In fact, even in Nigeria, we got to a point where the president started becoming the minister for petroleum in Nigeria. It happened before my eyes. So, because oil is the main thing that Nigeria has. Nigeria has about 37.28 billion barrels of oil, and then with bunch of gas reserve, trillions, billions and trillions of cubic feet of gas reserves in the country. And yet the country is one of the poorest in the whole world today. You can imagine that. So what these guys do is to sit down and make sure that they order everybody, make sure that all the corrupt channels through which, all the conduits through which the wealth of the nation is transferred and siphoned to the colonials, that they are all oiled and kept intact, so that every time you come to power and you see a puppet, the first thing you're going to notice is that the level of corruption is going to be very astronomical. And what is corruption in Africa? Corruption on the African continent, if you put it in a different context, basically means an avenue or a conduit through which money belonging to the people of Africa is channeled to the colonial powers in Europe. It is done that way so that you can blame your political officials in your country and not blame the real culprit who is stealing from you. That's why their corporations are all over Africa, bearing different names. Now, what they're doing right now, because of what is happening because of the shakeup that is happening to them in Africa, what they're doing is that all the big corporations through which they have controlled these African countries are beginning to change their names. They are changing their names to local names that people can relate to. The CEOs and MDs are becoming the locals that we know. So you see, oh, that guy is related to my mother and my brother's sister and sister. And he's now the MD CEO of that company, so and so company. But these guys are slaves still working for the same colonial powers. This is it. So what we need is not puppets. We need revolutionaries, Pan-Africanist revolutionaries. And I can tell you, if you are a revolutionary waiting in the wings somewhere, be not afraid. The land of Africa is ready. The people of Africa are ready. Everything is ready. The elements are with us. The God of heaven is with us. The winds are with us. The sun, the moon, and everything is with us. You will never fail if you have the intent of reclaiming the stolen sovereignty of any African nation today. Mark my words. You can save this video and print these words and take them to the bank. You will never fail. You will succeed.
Let me ask you this. Your question. I have a question. A term you use, Michael Langley. Michael Langley. I'm just going to give you those two words. The general, for those who don't know, he's the puppet general that they put in charge of so-called AFRICOM. And I'm just going to leave those two words. He's an American, a black American. And when they put him in power, I, went ballistic and said, you got to be, I know what you're doing. I can see what you're doing. You give me, from Africa, looking at this man, your thoughts.
My thoughts are just as good as yours, but probably much deeper than yours, because in Africa, we have the benefit of hindsight. We know already what the plan is. We are already used to having puppets imposed on us. And now the benefit of hindsight that I was talking about is Libya, not too far off. 2011. Why do you think they put Obama there? Everybody was screaming, oh, the first black president, da, 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 da. And then it turned out our first black president of America was the one who now oversaw the destruction of the greatest leader Africa has ever produced. The man who had the blueprint and the manual for the liberation of Africa and was telling African countries to stop taking money from IMF and World Bank. IMF and World Bank are the worst demons. They are the devils that the colonial powers used to hold Africa down. I call them cankerworm and palmer worm. It was Gaddafi who was ready to destroy them in Africa, who told African countries, whatever amount of money they give to you, I will give you from Libya. Stop taking money from them. Let us get together and form the United States of Africa. Let us have a new common currency that is backed with gold and not the fiat nonsense that they have given to us today. Common paper with which they come to buy substance from us and go away. And our foolish puppets carry all those papers. Some of them, you see them in the video, they are rotten, they are messed up. You don't know the money you have is just like a toilet paper. But there's a man who was ready to help us in Africa. And Obama beat his chest and stood and have this as his legacy, that you're the one that destroyed that for Africa. He did not destroy a Libyan citizen or a Libyan strongman. He destroyed an African revolutionary. Obama hurt Africa, not Libya. Have you seen Libya lately? Have you seen what democracy they brought to Libya, what it led to? As if we are all blind, like we can't see. So when we look at Michael Langley, we are looking at a repeat of history that we have all vowed will never happen again. We are looking at a potential repeat of history. That's why there was such a firestorm in social media. Everywhere, all over the world, people were like, no, not again. Not again. I'm old enough to have seen what happened then. If we had the amount of publicity that we have today, and the kind of media power that we have today, then they wouldn't have taken away Muammar Gaddafi. Do you know, Garland, what Libya was before Muammar Gaddafi took over? Do you know? I'm not sure you know. You may have to go and research that. Libya was regarded as the poorest nation in the whole world because the foreigners, the colonials, were stealing the oil of Libya. They were stealing it and ripping them off. Life expectancy was at an abysmal low. Nothing worked in Libya. Go and fact check me if you think I'm lying. When Muammar Gaddafi came, you know what he did? He followed that doctrine. He took over the corporations, all the oil, all the wealth of Libya. He took it over. And what did he do? Very simple. He nationalized it. Darling, he nationalized the oil wealth of Libya. It's as simple as ABC. He was no longer waiting for someone to sell their oil at $1 million and give them $1. No, they were deciding how much they sold their oil. They kept the money, and everyone in Libya began to live like kings. Did you know that in Libya, before they took Gaddafi out, if you were a young man and you were going to get married, you had about $40,000 to $50,000 gift from the government, and then you had an apartment waiting for you. Life expectancy was the highest in Libya than any other African country. Libya was the strongest economy in the whole of Africa. The same nation that was the poorest, because he took over the natural resources of the country and nationalized it. And we now found from history that it was Muammar Gaddafi of Libya that now gave all these Gulf states that you see today as rich ones, that gave them the idea to take charge of their own resources. You saw that Trump just visited Qatar and UAE and the Gulf, and he came back saying powerful countries, strong poor countries, rich countries. They even sent a jet to him. He came back with trillions of dollars of deals. We are richer than all of them in that place. One nation in Africa can take care of the wealth of maybe 2 or 3 Gulf states. But where are we? The Gulf states can buy almost all of Africa, maybe one of them, because we don't have access to our own natural resources. This is what Abraham Traore is doing in Libya. So, Michael Langley, you are fighting with Africa. You were not fighting with Abraham Traore. Every African you meet, please take your time, do an independent research. Every African you meet knows that Michael Langley is a puppet, is a sellout, he is somebody that needs to be exorcised of the demons of colonial impositions. We are tired, Garland. We are tired. We are tired, and we will not accept any other imposition like Michael Langley on the continent, like what they did with Obama. It's not going to happen. That's what Africans said. We have said it, and you need to believe us when we tell you that enough is enough.
Wow, that's interesting stuff. Let me ask you this. I'm a believer. This started in Ukraine. This all started in Ukraine. That when the U.S. empire said we're going to come to Russia's border and we're going to sharpen up this knife, Ukraine. We're going to sharpen it up and we're going to put it to Russia's throat and we're going to tear Russia to pieces. And Russia just said, well, you may do that, but you're going to have to fight to do it. You know, they didn't say you can't do it. They said you may do that, but you're going to have to fight to do it. I think that created a dynamic worldwide where people who are all afraid the United States is the world power, it's the Eula power. And once they saw one country say, okay, we may lose, we may win, we'll go fight. I think it started something and it spread throughout the world. And that if the United States hadn't made that mistake, they may still be pushing along. But they made that area. And that's not to say, I'm saying that the African people don't get the credit for their revolutionary spirit in fighting back. I'm just saying that this dynamic began something. The empire going after the Russia on their border began something, and Russia making the decision to fight back without fear. The empire started something that they didn't realize they were starting, and that's what's spreading everywhere. And Africa will be the place that it's starting to explode on them.
The best way to destroy the colonial powers, the best way to wage the war that is raging between Russia and colonial West is to wage it on the continent of Africa. Russia understands that. Only kindergartens in international politics do not understand that the reason there's no peace in this war between Russia and Ukraine is because of Africa. A lot of people don't know that, but we know that, and I can explain it to you. Okay? So now you see, if you look at the guys who are the major cheerleaders for the war to continue, you're seeing France at the forefront. Who is the biggest loser of the war in Africa? It is France. Now you see Germany. Germany is occupying, neo-colonially occupying another nation in Africa that is so rich in uranium, Namibia. And you see Germany. Then who else do you see? You see Britain, the second largest holder, if not the largest holder of colonies. No, is the largest holder of colonies in Africa, followed by France. Can you see the people who are at the forefront pushing? We need to go to war, go to war. Don't forget about peace, peace, peace. They look at Hungary, look at Slovakia, look at these other guys. They don't own any colony anywhere. But the guys who are rattled and unsettled by the whole war, that want to really go to war, want Ukraine to keep Russia busy on the battlefield, are the colonials, the holders of colonial territories in Africa. You know why? Because if peace comes between Russia and Ukraine, Russia will have so much peace that their military will not be sent to go to any war, and more than half of that military will be sent to parts of Africa to help secure potential revolutionaries that are coming. The best way to distract Russia is to keep them busy at the battlefront, to weaken their military. When you hear them say that, you don't know why they're saying that. They're saying it because of Africa. We are telling you that France does not have a drop of gold in their soil, and they have the fourth largest. Do you understand what that means? The reserve, fourth largest in the world. You see nations in Europe that don't have anything, but you go and see how much they have. It's beyond, it boggles the mind. But the nations that produce and milk, they have nothing. Can you believe that? It's just recently that Russia partnered with Mali to build a gold refinery in Mali. Can you imagine, Garland? The home of gold in Africa is just getting a gold refinery. Abraham Traore just recently also began to push for that, and they're now looking for nuclear. You can imagine people who own uranium don't have any nuclear powered plant. There's no light, nothing. But they are sending the uranium to Europe, where they use it to generate power, generate electricity. But they sleep in darkness every single day of their lives. The seventh largest uranium producer in the world has no light, no electricity. No, for how long will this injustice go on? So Russia has now been pushed to the wall, and the only way they are fighting back is by helping Africa to break loose from the colonial enslavement, which is a way to... Let me tell you, if you kill 10,000 French soldiers, say for instance, they send 10,000 French soldiers to Ukraine and Russians kill them. If you destroy all the armaments on the battlefield, it is not anywhere close to taking one nation in Africa away from France. So what Russia is doing is collateral, eternal damage. And what they're doing is not just helping Africa to break loose, they are also helping to consolidate the gains, the victories that they have got. That's why you look at what is happening. The moment these nations are broken away from France, immediately they move at lightning speed. Oh, get your soldiers out of here. IMF, get out. World Bank, get out. Your radio stations, get out. You don't want anybody propagandizing our people. You get out, you get out, get out, get out. And then immediately they consolidate. And once they consolidate, now it becomes permanent. This is what has happened in these countries. And the blueprint, Russia is the only world power that is able and willing to release the blueprint for decolonization to Africans. They have different parts